The Shells of Wisdom. Once upon a time in a small coastal town, lived two young friends, James and Mark. Both of them came from modest backgrounds, and were determined to earn some money during their summer break. They had heard stories about rare shells and conches that people sometimes found along the beach, and sold to collectors and artisans for good money. One bright morning the two friends packed their lunches, took bags to carry their findings, and headed to the beach with excitement in their hearts. The tide was low, the wind was calm, and the entire shore was glistening with treasures brought in by the sea. They began combing through the sand, and before long they were each collecting various types of small conches, shiny, unique, and colorful. The work was slow but rewarding. James carefully picked every shell he thought looked even remotely interesting, while Mark was less patient but equally hopeful. After an hour or so, James suddenly shouted, "Mark, look at this!" Mark ran over and saw James holding a huge conch, covered in seaweed but clearly a rare and beautiful specimen. Mark's heart sank. "That's probably worth a fortune," he thought, jealousy creeping into his mind. Driven by a sudden desperation, Mark started tossing aside his smaller conches in hopes of freeing up space and moving faster to find a big one like James. He ran along the beach, digging and searching frantically, his eyes scanning only for something big. But the day passed, and as the sun began to set, the beach darkened. The boys decided to head home. James carried a large sack full of small conches, along with his prized big conch. Mark, however, had nothing. He had discarded everything in the chase for something bigger. The next morning they went to the town market. Seashell collectors and handicraft sellers were waiting eagerly, as they did every week. James laid out all his finds. A collector gasped at the big conch and paid him $500 on the spot. Several vendors admired the diversity and beauty of his smaller shells, and, in total, offered $2,000 for the lot. James walked away with $2,500, beaming with satisfaction. Mark stood by in silence, feeling a pit in his stomach. He watched the small shells he had thrown away the day before, now in the hands of James, being bought and admired. His desperation, impatience, and envy had cost him dearly. Feeling ashamed, he muttered, "I threw away those small ones. I thought they were worthless compared to the big one." James smiled gently and said, "I know. I picked them up after you threw them. I didn't find them all. You did. You just didn't see their value." That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He thought deeply about what had happened. Not just about the shells, but about life. He had learned something far more valuable than money. A year later, the next summer, Mark returned to the beach. Patient, humble, and observant, he picked up every small shell he could find, knowing their true worth. He didn't race or compare. He smiled at every shell he found, no matter its size. James saw him and joined. The two friends walked along the shore, bags filling slowly with treasures. Not just from the sea, but from the lessons of life. Moral of the story: in chasing after the big rewards, don't overlook the small opportunities. Success is built not just on rare finds, but on patience, consistency, and appreciation for the small things that add up over time. Just like the conches, every small step, every little effort, and every humble moment matters, often more than we realize.